Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Randolph Brooks, and I'm here representing Brooks Psychological Services with my wife, Tanisha, who you all saw yesterday. And today we are going to be talking about the topic of addiction. And while I am a trained licensed psychologist, I am licensed in both the state of Connecticut and North Carolina. I must say that I am not a licensed clinical addiction specialist. That is a role that does exist in North Carolina. So there are people who are way more versed in this topic than I am. But with that being said, I do know enough to talk to you all this evening. And the reason why I want to make that distinction is because I have about 15 minutes, so I will give you the best overview that I can in 15 minutes. However, some of the coworkers that I've worked with in the past, they can talk about addiction for days. And because that is just how complicated the topic actually is. Now, for the purpose of what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be going over the definition of addiction, the 4 basic steps of addiction, what happens in families when it comes to addiction, what are some treatment strategies, and most importantly, what does God say? So the definition of addiction, this is a textbook definition, but I want to point out a few keys. Addiction is a neuropsychological disorder characterized by a persistent and intense urge to use drugs or engage in behavior that produces a natural reward despite substantial harm and other negative consequences. What I want to first focus on is the neuropsychological disorder. What we're saying here is that with addiction, there is a brain and behavior connection. There's a brain and behavior connection that we will talk a bit more about. It is, even though there are harmful consequences, you already know that as the person who is addicted to whatever stimuli you're addicted to. You know it's harmful. You know it's not good for you. However, it gives you something, this natural reward. And what the natural reward is for addiction is dopamine. Dopamine is a naturally occurring neurotransmitter. We are all born with it. Dopamine is not some foreign agent that is within our bodies. It is a natural neurotransmitter that helps us feel reward when certain things happen. So, for example, when I get home and my children run up to me and they say, "Daddy, daddy, daddy," and my wife says, "Hi, babe," instant dopamine hit. I feel good. This is why I come home. Not because it's my house and I pay the bills here. No, it's because the people that I love the most are here. My brother used to run marathons, and he would talk about getting this runner's high. At a certain point while he's running, even though he's tired, even though he's exhausted, he gets a dopamine hit, and that keeps him going. We all get dopamine hits in various things that we love doing in life. So dopamine is not the enemy. What ends up happening is there are some substances that will trigger a dopamine release. And people who are engaging in addiction or people who are in the throes of addiction are getting that dopamine release extremely quickly. For example, my brother does not get a runner's high with that first step. He, in some cases, will have to get to mile 5 or mile 6 or 7 to get that runner's high. I don't get that runner's high, as you can see. I do get a bit of a workout high when I lift weights, but it's not when I do my first rep. It's probably not until the end of the workout where I get that high. So I have to go through the work to get there. It's the exact same thing when it comes to most of the highs that we experience in life. It doesn't happen at the beginning. It happens as you persist through the process. Drugs and alcohol and other addictions, they just bypass all of that work to just get you to the dopamine. Addiction is a complex interaction between the brain circuits, genetics, environment, and life experiences, making it difficult to control the urge or to use or to engage in addictive substances or behaviors. So what are we saying is that sometimes we experience things in life that actually push us towards addiction. So in other words, addiction will swap out our everyday desires of the brain with those of the stimuli that one is addicted to. So if we want, for example, I see a young man in the back eating, drinking. We want food. Our bodies need food. We need that to survive. Addiction will swap out your desire for food because it still takes a little bit of time for that dopamine to arrive into your brain. It will swap out that desire for food for something else that will go directly to your brain immediately. Does that make sense so far? I want to make sure that we're clear on this. You cannot become addicted to dopamine. Dopamine is something that's naturally occurring in your body. You don't get addicted to that. Addiction is a psychological and physical, there's a psychological and physical component to addiction. What we're saying is, it's not psychological and behavioral component. So what we're saying is, you are not addicted to dopamine, you are addicted to that thing that gives you the dopamine. The faster it gives you the dopamine, the more addicted you become. And of course, you also hear where people are we're going to get into this a little bit later, but people who will seek out, I don't know what I'm doing wrong, I apologize. People will seek out a substance to get their addiction as quickly as possible. There are 4 steps to addiction: the experimentation, the regular use, the risky use, and then the addiction and dependence. So when we talk about experimentation, there are some people, I work with college students in my day job, and so there are some students who they're told, hey, you should try this energy drink because I know that you're struggling to stay awake at our 8 a.m. class. Well, I've never done that before, but maybe it will help because I can't fall asleep in physics again. If I fall asleep in physics, I'm going to have a problem. So you'll try that energy drink or you'll try that coffee, and it's okay. I don't need this thing every day, but that's one or two times just so I can get it through this class. You then move on to regular use where I'm just drinking coffee every morning. It becomes a part of my habit. It becomes a part of my daily habit. And then, while I'm just drinking coffee just to stay awake for this 8 o'clock class, before you know it, I'm now drinking the coffee at 8 a.m. I'm getting another cup at 9 a.m. I'm getting another cup at 11 a.m. Then I get one at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, just to make it through the day. And then you get to the point where you become addicted and dependent, meaning that if I stop drinking the coffee, I will have withdrawal effects. If I stop drinking the coffee, then I'll start getting shakes. Then I'll start getting headaches. And that's essentially the exact same cycle that we see, whether it's alcohol, drugs, pornography, food, the list goes on because you're always getting that dopamine hit. When you drink the coffee, yeah, you get a little bit of stimulus with respect to the caffeine that helps keep you awake, but you also are getting dopamine. And oftentimes we don't make that connection because coffee is legal. Energy drinks are legal. You go to the grocery store, I can't count how many different types of energy drinks there are. All of that stuff is legal, but it's also very addicting. Just right here? Okay. Now, as you go through this entire process of those 4 steps of addiction, we also see people who recognize, oh, okay, I need to stop this. This is bad for me. I'm not getting the results that I need, or is not getting the results that I used to get, where all I needed was that one little energy drink just to make it through one class. Now I need it to just get through my day. This is not good for me. I need to stop. I stop, I achieve the goal of stopping, and then I start drinking it again. That's known as relapse. Why is relapse so important for us to recognize? Is because oftentimes people may have one relapse, but they'll be okay, they can keep going. Other times, people may have one relapse, and then they just say, no, it's not worth it. I am not good enough. I am not good enough because I got a cup of coffee yesterday. I walked by Starbucks, and most of the time I'm able to walk by and not have a problem, but I just grabbed a tall black coffee. And I can't beat this thing. I'm no good. I might as well just keep going. That's one of the things we want to avoid with relapse is the recognition that you can't beat up on yourself. What are some avenues that we have before we get to there? Before we get to some solutions, what happens in some of our families with addiction? And mind you, it does not matter what the substance is. It does not matter what the stimulus is. We oftentimes will see increased anxiety and stress, just as my wife talked about yesterday, because we know it's not good for us. So it doesn't matter what it is. Some people are addicted to exercise, and they can't go a day without exercise. Well, that's healthy, right? In most cases it is, yes. But there are some times in which, hey, you twisted your ankle yesterday. Should you be trying to run again today? Or, well, babe, we're supposed to be doing worship right now. It's time for worship. We need to put the kids to bed, so can we do worship first? Well, if I don't get my exercise in, something's going to be off. Like, even though exercise in and of itself is a good thing, if your behavior and your psychological perspective of that activity is not one that is healthy, meaning it's not something that is taking over your life, it can become an addiction. Increased conflict and fighting between family members. I told you that I'm going to work out from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. Don't bother me. But worship is 6:30 because we need to get the kids out of the house by 7:15. No. I have to exercise between these times. It can be a problem. Behavioral changes. I'm going to have to start spending money on more and more workout equipment. I'm going to have to spend money on more and more supplements and food programs and this and this and this and this and this. And I miss a workout, your fault. I blame you because of something that I did or did not do. All of these things can occur within families that can create untold strife and conflict. And while we're talking about exercise, as I was mentioning before, it could be any substance, anything. I could be sitting on my phone while my kids are running around beside me. It's not something illegal. It's not a negative substance, but it's distracting me and taking me away from where I know I am supposed to be. There are multiple treatments for substance use. There's multiple treatments for addiction. One of the more common ones that we often hear about are treatment centers. You can have counseling, medication, or both. Counseling, because sometimes it is strictly a mental health behavioral concern. For example, the working out, behavioral, mental health. Phone addictions, TV, gambling, porn addiction, all of that is a mental health concern. There are some medications that can help with that as well, that can help with that addiction, medications that can help not so much block dopamine, but can help the dopamine stay there longer, so you don't do it as often. Does that make sense so far? When your dopamine hits your neurotransmitter, it's only there for a few moments, and then it leaves. There are medications that can mimic dopamine, so they'll stay in the neurotransmitters longer, or medications that will actually cause the dopamine to stay where it is longer. So medication, counseling, in some cases both, for treatment is very helpful. Now, when it comes to substances in particular, oftentimes you need to go through a stricter recovery program, meaning detox. Sometimes you can detox on your own cold turkey. Other times, especially with substances like alcohol and some opiates, you cannot detox by yourself, because once you start the detox process, it can lead to other medical problems. So having detox in a psychiatric facility or a medical hospital is what is necessary for some substances, just to make sure that as that substance is leaving your system, you're not creating other medical problems. From that point, you may go to an inpatient facility to keep you away from those substances, but also to give you that counseling that you need, very intense counseling, which you can then step down to an outpatient facility, and in some cases, a residential program. Not just to keep you away from these substances, but also to help you retrain yourself as to how I can live without this substance in my life. Oftentimes, outside of a substance, we can take some simple steps. You know, what is a date that you plan on quitting? So if I'm addicted to my cell phone, what is the date that I'm going to say I'm going to stop this? Starting next Monday, I am going to turn my phone off. I'm going to leave my phone at home. I'm going to just leave it there. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to bring it with me. I'm going to keep it out of my pocket. Change your environment. If you know that you use your cell phone more often when you're in home, can you leave? Can you leave your house? Not go to a new house or anything, but take some time away. Go for a walk. Get out in nature. Explore the world around you without your device. That's similar to distracting yourself. So I'm not going to touch my cell phone. I'm going to hang out with some friends. I'm going to read my Bible. I'm going to read a different book. I'm going to, again, leave my phone here. Well, all my books are on Kindle. Well, I'm going to have to get some hardback because I can't use the phone. What have you tried in the past? Why? We don't want to repeat the cycle. So I would leave my phone over here on the table. Why? Because the last time when I tried to leave my phone here, I only left it here for 5 minutes. So I can't leave it here because chances are in 5 minutes I'm just going to grab it again. But if I leave it over there, maybe it will take me a bit longer. Maybe I can leave it there and maybe it'll go 10 minutes. Maybe I'll go 15 minutes. Create a support network. So you hear about programs like AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and NA, Narcotics Anonymous. They operate on a support network because we recognize that addiction, it carries an effect over all aspects of your life. When you are addicted to certain substances, you have burned bridges with your friends. There are people who don't really get what's going on. They will ostracize you in a way, and it's really stigmatizing. A support network that won't allow you to be stigmatized is what a lot of people need. The support network in which people know that you know what I've done and I'm accepted. You know what has happened and you still accept me. I know what you've done and I accept you. For a lot of people who are addicted to something, whatever it is, they may, even though they know logically they are not alone, they may feel alone. So you will see different communities, what are known as recovery communities or collegiate recovery communities, emerge as a space in which people can go and they know that I will be accepted here. That was the role of the church years ago, and we see other churches, many churches doing it now again. We will accept you here. We know what occurred, and we don't care because we accept you for who you are. Now, what does God say? God's forgiveness. And be kind to one another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 32. Peace. And let the peace of God rule in your hearts, to which also you were called in one body, and be thankful. So, God wants us to be in community with each other. God wants us to be forgiving of each other. And there's one other thing that I forgot to include as I was typing this slide up. But God's faithfulness. God's faithfulness. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation has been overtaken, no temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able to bear. But with temptation, it will provide you an escape that you may be able to bear that temptation. So what is God saying? Even though we know addiction is real, there is this actual interplay in this wonderful mind that God has created for us. Addiction gives us the dopamine that we need. However, addiction is a problem. Dopamine is not the problem, addiction is the problem. We have been addicted to various things before. God has gotten us out. God continues to get us out. This is not to say, oh yeah, fine, go ahead and get addicted because God's going to take care of it. No. This is to say that God has taken care of us before and he will take care of us. So we don't need addiction. We don't need the coffee to stay awake in class. You just need to go to sleep a little early the night before. You don't need to be addicted to working out. You do need to work out in moderation. You don't do things in moderation. That is one of the key factors that keeps us away from being addicted to things. Moderation. Not to say that you can drink alcohol, no. But when you say you need a dopamine hit of some sort, you can work out. You can go for a walk. You can talk to the people that you love in your life. You can do things to give you that release of dopamine that you need. Knowing this, that there is no temptation that God has placed on this earth that he will not carry you through. And with that, do we have time for questions? How much time? I don't even know what time. I don't have a watch. We have like 2 minutes for questions. Are there any questions? Yes, ma'am.
What would be your biggest recommendation for people trying to support their family trying to get out of alcoholism?
The very first thing I would say is remind your family member that I still love you. Even though I know that you are dealing with this thing, I still love you. The second thing is there is support. Oftentimes, again, people feel like I'm in this by myself. There is support. And if you're talking about something like alcoholism in particular, please don't try to do it on your own. I know people want to stop drinking, but they will start drinking again because those withdrawal symptoms are so bad that without the alcohol, it's painful. It's physically painful. And so to avoid the pain, that's why they drink. So to get medical support, get professional support as you're trying to withdraw from alcohol, knowing that we love you and we will be here for you when you come back home. Yes, ma'am.
What kind of resources are there locally for people who are addicted to drugs? Again, who really have a hard time, kind of dealing with that addiction. Because, I know like Holly Hill
Yeah.
is there, and so people go in and out and in and out. But like, what's the next step for someone who's, for example, been at Holly Hill a few times, or like what can be done to help people?
The next step would be, um, if I can go back, um, Holly Hill, for some of you all don't know, that's an inpatient psychiatric hospital. So Holly Hill would be in this range right here. So when we're looking at outpatient services, so we're looking at getting with a psychiatrist and a mental health provider once you leave Holly Hill. So have a plan in place. Because sometimes people will just leave after they've been detoxed and they'll just go on about their day without a plan. So making sure that there's a plan in place. You can get some plans through NAMI, so NAMI. That is one of the largest mental health organizations in the country. They have chapters in every state. So that would be a great resource for addiction in particular, and as well as when you're looking for a mental health provider, as I was mentioning before, looking for someone who is what's known as an LCAS, a licensed clinical addiction services. Thank you. The idea is that these are the people that I was mentioning before who have way more knowledge and experience around this particular topic as far as treatment is concerned. Because there is the detox treatment, which is we're just gonna get you clean so that you can go on about your day. But the follow-up, as you're mentioning, would come from a place like not a private provider, but a individual therapist, as well as some of these other programs like AA and NA. Now, for some people, they don't like those sorts of models, but those aren't the only ones that exist. Are there any other questions? Yes, sir.
What would be your advice for someone or some friend who has who's addicted to pornography?
When you're talking about an addiction to pornography, that is a scary one. And the reason why that one is scary is because that is one that typically happens behind closed doors. No one will know because I'm just do this by myself. And once I leave the room, or once I leave the space, I'm back in quote unquote polite society. No one knows what was going on. There aren't any of those outward visual symptoms, whereas someone with addiction to a substance, you can kind of see that after a while. You can see it, you can smell it. When it comes to pornography, it all lives in your head. So the very first thing I would tell that person is that while pornography does give you that dopamine release that you're looking for, it is so temporary that people are going back to it quickly. And the more you develop a tolerance for it, the worse it gets. And you know it's not actively providing you anything. It's just taking. What is it taking from you? It's taking your experience with your spouse, your partner, or whomever, whether you're married now or you plan on being married later. What else is it taking? It is taking your autonomy, because you start getting to a place in which you can't function without it, which becomes a significant problem. The thing about pornography also is, just like some of the other things I was talking about, it's legal. So people think, well, it's not that big of a deal, it's not that big of a problem. Oh, it's a significant problem. And one of the ways through that, or outside of that, for some people, it is get a support network. So there are people who will act as what's known as an accountability buddy or accountability partner, somebody that you can actually talk to about what's going on, whether you want to have a professional support or someone who's not a professional, someone who's a bit more closer to you. You want to have somebody that you know that you can talk to about what's going on, someone that you can trust, someone who has a little bit of space from you. There are some people who will say we should go as far as, let me know the passwords to your computer and I'll put on some software to track your computer. That is a bit extreme in my opinion. However, for some people, they feel as though that's what they need to stop.